Cornelia was the closest thing to royalty in the Roman Republic. Like all Romans, she had been raised to appreciate the achievements of her ancestors, but as the daughter of Scipio Africanus, the man who vanquished Hannibal, she had more to celebrate than any of her peers. Even aside from the leading efforts of her father that saw him lionized as the greatest general the Republic had yet produced, the Second Punic War had been a family affair, with members of her clan guiding Rome through its darkest hours, and helping the Republic remain resolute until Carthage was brought to its knees. But, despite the great achievements of her Cornelian lineage, she wanted more. The impulse to better the accomplishments of the past with each succeeding generation was a unique aspect of the hyper-competitive Roman aristocracy that inculcated a deep sense of ambition in its political class. Though the achievements of prominent ancestors were badges of honor used in campaign stump speeches, the idea of resting on these laurels was anathema. Because women were formally barred from the political arena, they transferred their ambitions to their male family members, particularly their husbands and sons. Thus, it is no surprise that the fame of her father made Cornelia all the more conscious of the high bar her sons would have to one day clear to truly make their own name. So, unlike other aristocratic Roman women, she took a personal hand in their education. Tacitus would praise her centuries later for instructing them herself instead of leaving the task to slaves. By all accounts, a formidable intellect, Cornelia daily drilled into her young sons, Tiberius and Gaius, exactly what her expectations were for them. Owing to their illustrious descent, greatness, popular acclaim, and an eternal place among the giants of Roman history was their birthright, and Cornelia would place them both on the path to achieve these things. But this would all come at a tragic cost. For Cornelia, who would bury these sons, and for the fragile republic that the Gracchi brothers were to throw into a new era of volatility that it would not survive. Fully understanding the story of Tiberius and Caius Gracchus and their doomed efforts to reform the Republic requires a comprehensive study of their world, the social and economic conditions that were pushing Rome to crisis. But an understanding of the men themselves and what motivated them must begin with their mother, Cornelia. Like all men, they were products of their times. But the Gracchi were also products of their mother, and, far from being embarrassed by this fact, they would be the first to boast of her care in their upbringing and her status as the ideal Roman matron. Cornelia was born into a world that placed severe limitations on the agency of women, even those of her station. For, though she was born at the very top as the daughter of the all-conquering general Publius Cornelius Scipio Africanus, she was only granted the single name Cornelia, in contrast to the four her famous father would accumulate. Her three brothers all bore unique names, but she shared only one name with her older sister and countless other women in the clan. It was a startling admission, even from her own parents, that no great things were expected of her. She may marry a great man, and even birth great sons one day, but Cornelia, like all women of her day, was effectively viewed as interchangeable with the other women of her family when it came time to make marriage alliances. Still, they at least saw fit to buck convention and give her a proper education, something that would ultimately set her apart from the women of her era. But even with her schooling, she still faced tremendous cultural hurdles. So it is an incredible achievement that she proved to be the most adept and accomplished of her father's children, leaving a legacy that shaped Roman society forever and still resonates today. She was born as a Cornelia, but to those who study Roman history, she is the Cornelia. It was her steadfast commitment to raising her children that exemplified the highest Roman ideals, as well as her lifelong embodiment of matronly virtues, which made her a celebrated figure among the Romans, even by the staunch conservatives that attacked her son's radical reform agenda. Though our sources for her life are far from comprehensive, and even farther from being objective, there is little doubt that Cornelia was a remarkable woman, whose intelligence, poise, and sheer willpower helped her transcend the constraints placed on women in ancient Rome that surely relegated countless other remarkable women to historical obscurity. We know more about Cornelia than almost any other woman in the Roman Republic, but unfortunately, nearly all the information we have about her is peripheral, relating only to how she interacted with the men who surrounded her. Some purported letter fragments do survive, but these seem to be likely forgeries, or at least heavily interpolated. Sources from ancient Roman women are incredibly rare, so the mere presence of a document even ostensibly from her hand is noteworthy. Cornelia was astute enough to know the limitations she faced, however, and early on she certainly realized that if her legacy was to be defined by the men in her life, then she would cultivate sons of the highest pedigree, men that could match her own towering intellect and ambition. Of course, every aristocratic Roman mother set out to do this, but few could claim even one son to rival hers, and Cornelia managed to raise the two most impressive Roman politicians of their generation. This is of course not to discount the influence of their father, Tiberius Sempronius Gracchus, in the lives of the brothers. He, too, was a significant player in the Republic. Censor, twice consul, and awarded 2 triumphs. Few men could claim such honors. Indeed, we should expect nothing less than such distinction for a man who was to marry the daughter of the great Scipio Africanus. He was approximately 30 years her senior, which was a significant age gap, even at the time. But by all accounts, the marriage was a happy one. It was certainly fruitful, as Cornelia gave birth to an astounding 12 children, 6 boys and 6 girls. Tragically, however, 9 of the children died before reaching adulthood, a testament to just how deadly the first years of a child's life were in this era, even for families that could afford the best medical care. The 3 surviving children were the brothers Tiberius and Gaius Gracchus, as well as their older sister Sempronia. The elder Tiberius would die in 154, with Tiberius approximately 10 and young Gaius just a year old. After the death of her husband, Cornelia would devote the remainder of her life to honoring his memory, even rejecting a marriage proposal from a Ptolemaic king. Cornelia took charge of the children and of the estate, and showed herself so discreet, so good a mother, and so magnanimous. For when Ptolemy the king offered to share his crown with her and sought her hand in marriage, she refused him, and remained a widow. In this state, she lost most of her children, but 3 survived. 1 daughter, who married Scipio the Younger, and 2 sons, Tiberius and Gaius. These sons Cornelia reared with such scrupulous care that, although confessedly no other Romans were so well endowed by nature, they were thought to owe their virtues more to education than to nature. She would rather live as a widow in Rome than as queen in Alexandria. Though it may seem remarkable to us, she was conscious of all that she would need to give up to wed Ptolemy. Doing so may bring her riches beyond her imagination, but it would also take her away from her children in Rome, and she would be unable to oversee their education. Such a prospect was unthinkable to a proper Roman matron. Cornelia had a reputation for frugal living, and her rejection of a life of royal luxury aligns with an illuminating anecdote about her character. When a Campanian lady staying at the house of Cornelia, the mother of the Gracchi, showed her jewels and other ornaments, which were the fairest of any at that time, Cornelia remained talking with her till her children returned from school. "And these," she said when they appeared, "are my ornaments." This attitude commended her to future generations of Roman moralists, and demonstrates that while other women of her class were competing to distinguish themselves through outward trappings of wealth, she was focused on differentiating herself through devotion to her children and by setting them up for future success. But we must pause before giving her too much credit, as Cornelia was only able to exercise this devotion because she was supported by a household of slaves and was the beneficiary of generations of wealth, itself the product of foreign plunder and maintained through constant exploitation. She seems to have much less refined tastes than her peers, but must be viewed in the context of her society, where she was still living a life of ease compared to the vast majority of the population. For, despite the radical turn of the Gracchi in their political careers, we must reiterate that they came from highly privileged stock. Indeed, Cornelia's intellect, poise, and grace all can be traced back to the schooling she received. Whereas traditionally a proper education was typically reserved for males, she had the good fortune to be born into not just the most prominent family in Rome, but one that was at the vanguard of introducing Hellenism to the Republic. The Scipio's affinity for all things Greek would cause rifts to open up between this new, modernizing faction and the traditionalists represented by Cato the Elder. Cornelia receiving a first-rate education in Greek philosophy and letters allowed her intellect to blossom, whereas many of her peers were stifled. That her uncle, Aemilius Paulus, captured the entire royal library of Macedon gave her the resources needed to pursue these studies. In addition, the magnificent wealth of her family meant that things such as gold jewelry and luxurious clothing were so commonplace as to be blasé. They were happy to see their daughter distinguish herself not in beauty, but in elegance, intelligence, and charm. We can thus understand that it was a confluence of factors which combined to make her perhaps the first truly educated Roman woman. But she would not be the last, for she extended her love of learning not just to her sons, but to their elder sister Sempronia as well. She even married her daughter to Scipio Aemilianus, the highly cultured general who had overseen the final destruction of Carthage in the Third Punic War, and the most desirable marriage partner in Rome. But this prestigious match only spurred Cornelia to press for greater things from her own sons. She complained to them that she was known in public life as the mother-in-law of Aemilianus, and not the mother of the Gracchi. Cornelia, the mother of Tiberius, who often reproached her sons because the Romans still called her the mother-in-law of Scipio, but not yet the mother of the Gracchi. That they were at this point far too young to match the achievements of the man who conquered Rome's most hated enemy meant nothing. Her expectation was that they surpass him. Her demand was glory, honor, and fame for her sons that would transcend all others. If you're enjoying this video, please do us a favor by liking, commenting, and subscribing. We're a small channel, and this is the only way to get the almighty YouTube algorithm to notice us. Furthermore, you can help Tribunate become more sustainable by becoming a member for as little as 99 cents a month. Thank you for all of your support. Some have seen in this immense pressure a possible explanation for the Gracchi to pursue a populare route to electoral success. After all, if they were to wait and follow the conventional approach, they would surely achieve consulships. But this would require years of paying their dues and favor trading within the traditional power structure. There may be some merit to this theory, but in my view, a better explanation for the populist turn was the education that they received from the distinguished philosophers that Cornelia employed as tutors, but also from their mother herself. Cicero, never one to speak positively of the Gracchi, cannot help himself but praise Cornelia for her role in educating her sons. We have all read the letters of Cornelia, the mother of the Gracchi, and are satisfied that her sons were not so much nurtured in their mother's lap as in the elegance and purity of her language. That he was able to read her letters at all is quite noteworthy, as they must have been impressive to still be in circulation decades after her death. Just as the brothers upended convention by promulgating new ideas about popular sovereignty through the tribunate, Cornelia herself would carve out unprecedented influence for a Roman matron by remaining involved in the political careers of her sons, providing counsel that they heeded, and if Plutarch is to be believed, even engaging in a bit of underhanded subterfuge to help them advance the populare cause. We are told his mother also took active part in his seditious measures, by secretly hiring from foreign parts and sending to Rome men who were ostensibly reapers. For, to this matter, there are said to have been obscure allusions in her letters. Still, her specific role in the political careers of her sons is disputed, with traditions emerging after her death which state she attempted to discourage Gaius from following in Tiberius's populare footsteps. A fragment of a letter, purportedly from her, survives, where she speaks candidly on the dangers of the populare path. The authenticity is disputed, but its mere presence alone is a testament to her powerful personality, if her name was viewed as reputable enough to warrant forgeries. But, even assuming that the letter is genuine, we cannot know for certain if she was truly opposed to populare tactics in principle, or because she saw the associated dangers and could not stomach losing her only surviving son, when she had already buried 10 children and her husband. What cannot be doubted is that in public she never spoke of her sons in anything but the highest terms. Even after the tragic death of Gaius, she would praise both sons. Cornelia is reported to have borne all her misfortunes in a noble and magnanimous spirit, and to have said of the sacred places where her sons had been slain that they were tombs worthy of the dead which occupied them. She resided on the promontory called Misenum, and made no change in her customary way of living. She had many friends, and kept a good table that she might show hospitality, for she always had Greeks and other literary men about her, and all the reigning kings interchanged gifts with her. She was indeed very agreeable to her visitors and associates when she discoursed to them about the life and habits of her father Africanus, but most admirable when she spoke of her sons without grief or tears, and narrated their achievements and their fate to all inquirers as if she were speaking of men of the early days of Rome. So, in the end, Cornelia had her wish. The sons she raised would continue to be spoken of as heroes of the Republic, and would inspire devotion that persisted long after their deaths. It had come at a terrible price, but the Gracchi had both fulfilled her wishes for them, and 2,000 years later they are regarded, even by detractors, as some of the most pivotal figures in Roman history. But Cornelia had done far more than raise 2 remarkable sons. She had herself become a celebrated example for Roman women to follow. She was awarded the remarkable honor of a public statue, becoming the first Roman woman to achieve this, joining her father and her sons in the pantheon of Republican heroes. The people were pleased at this, and gave their consent, honoring Cornelia no less on account of her sons than because of her father. Indeed, in after times they erected a bronze statue of her, bearing the inscription, Cornelia, Mother of the Gracchi. The base of this statue has even survived to the present, so she achieved her ultimate ambition. For today, when we are tasked with differentiating this Cornelia from the thousands of other Roman women who bore this simple name, she is specified not as Africanus's daughter, but as Cornelia, mother of the Gracchi. However, perhaps she deserves to simply be Cornelia, free of reference to any man, for she achieved what was impossible for the vast majority of Roman women, and became the author of her own immortality. This is a personal episode for me. Not only does it discuss the origins of my favorite figures in Republican history, but it is debuting on Mother's Day 2025, and I want to dedicate it to my mother, who also did all she could when raising me and my siblings to instill a lifelong love of reading and learning in each of us. Many of my happiest memories from early childhood involve her reading to me, and I would not be where I am without her. This channel certainly wouldn't exist if I didn't enjoy reading as much as I do, something that I owe largely to her. She is a lifelong believer in the value of education, and has worked as a special needs educator for decades, doing a task that is largely thankless in society, but one that clearly communicates her belief that all are entitled to a first-rate education. If you appreciate this channel, I ask that you show your gratitude today by donating to The Ark, an organization that works to advance the civil rights of those with intellectual and physical disabilities. It's a cause she is passionate about, and therefore one close to my heart as well. Thank you, and Happy Mother's Day.